So, as part of today's session, mainly we are going to discuss object-oriented programming. In object-oriented programming, we are having the concepts like class, object, and how to write a class, and how to create methods inside class, and what is an object, how to create an object. All those things we are going to discuss as part of today's session. And in object-oriented programming, we are having some more concepts like inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and so on. So totally I may take today's session and one more session I will take to cover this object-oriented programming. First, we'll start today's session how to create a class and how to create an object, how to create methods inside it. And if possible, I will give a brief introduction to inheritance. We'll try to finish all these topics by next session. So if you remember our first session, I discussed why object-oriented programming is required. Already we are having the concepts of procedure-oriented programming, that is functions concept. Already everything is there in C programming. Means why we require C++ like object-oriented programming. So if you remember our previous session, already we discussed why object-oriented programming is required. So object-oriented programming is nothing but why we require is. So again, I will rewind once again why we require this object-oriented programming. So like in the previous examples, whatever we discussed, for example, I'm declaring name equal to something, Jahangir, and password equal to, for example, username equal to something and password equal to something. If I declare all these variables in procedure oriented programming, like whatever we discussed in the functions and modules, packages, in those, if I know, means if I directly declare like this, what it will happen is, if I know the variable name, I can able to access the corresponding content. If I know the variable name, I can able to access the corresponding content, whatever the value inside that variable. Here there is no protection concept. There is no security concept. Directly I can able to access. There is no concept like public, private or protected where I can protect my variable. So that kind of concept is not there in the procedure oriented programming or function oriented programming. So in that case, we got one type of programming, that is object-oriented programming. Our Python also support this object-oriented programming like other programming languages. Whatever the concepts like inheritance, polymorphism, class and object, everything are supported in Python. And so this object-oriented programming, there are two main concepts you need to learn: class and object. Class and object. So what is the advantage of if you create a class is, so we'll see how to create a class. Let us say class student information. And in my class, there are plenty of many students like their details, complete details like what is the email ID, what is means all those age, gender, means all that important information is there. If I wanted to protect that information, I need to create it as a class. And if I create a class, the advantage is until unless if I know the logic, I cannot able to create an object. So first thing is, if you wanted to access this class, you need to create an object. You need to create an object. How to create an object, we'll see with an example. You need to create an object. Until unless if you create an object, it is not possible to access. It is not possible to access class until you are going to create object. If you are not able to create an object, it is not an object is, if you know the logic of class, then only it is possible to possible to create an object. What is an object? How to create it? We'll see with an example. So for example, in general example, if you see fruit is in a class, so fruit is one class. There will be many objects like mango fruit or banana fruit and so on. So fruit is nothing but collection of different types of fruits that may be mango fruit or banana fruit. So these are a specific instance is called as an object. So fruit is a generalized concept where there may be many kinds of fruits. And in that mango is an instance of the fruit, then it is called as an object. In programming also same thing. We are going to call how to create a class and object. We'll see with an example. One more example. Class means let us say BTech students class, general class. So class is one class where many students like Girish, Sudeshna, all these are the objects. So BTech class students, this is one class object, a class where many students will be there in my class. These students are the object for my class. So how to create a class in Python? First of all, class is nothing but a group of methods. A class is nothing but a group of methods, or where I can say uh, a group of methods or variables or function. Nothing but here a class is nothing but a group of methods and variables combined into a single entity. First, we'll see the description of a class, then we can understand the advantages of the class with example program. Combined into single entity. A class is a physical representation, or simply I can say a class is a logical name. A class is a logical name until unless an object is created. An object is created. There is no existence for the class. There is no existence of the class. Means just it is a logical name. If I create an object, for example, a class like class personal information is one class, and I declared the methods get person info is one method. So what is method? There is a slight difference between method and functions. Already we discussed functions, right? Like similarly, we are going to write functions in class, but those are called as methods. There is a slight difference. What is that method? We will see with an example. A class is nothing but collection of variables, like the variables we can declare like a name, password, or whatever the details you want. Along with we can declare some methods. So what I'm telling is a class is just a logical name. So it is just a logical name. There is no physical existence until unless if you create an object. If you don't create an object, there is no physical existence. For example, if I say fruit, there will be hundreds of fruits categories are there in the market. Just it will be a logical thinking. Fruit may be that thing, or this fruit are many kinds of fruits. Means it will come into existence only if I specify a particular fruit. Uh, if I say mango fruit, I can visualize what is the color, what is the shape, means what is the means you can visualize only if it is created a particular instance. So similar way, a memory will not be created for class. So it will not have any existence. Memory will not be created until unless if you create an object. Until unless if you create an object. So memory will be allocated for the objects, not the class which you are going to create. So if you create an object, then only memory will be allocated for your class. So let us see with simple example, and first we'll see what is the syntax. So in order to create a class, keyword is class. So keyword is class, class followed by class name, and here we are going to write a group of statements, right? Same concept we need to follow, that is indentation concept. If you wanted to write a group of statements, means if you wanted to declare multiple variables or functions within the class, if you wanted to declare, then you need to follow whatever the variables you are going to declare or whatever the methods you are going to declare, all should follow the indentation concept. If you declare any variables or methods, so that should contain, so same indentation concept. If you wanted to declare within the class, if we are going to declare a group of variables and methods within the class, right, it should follow the indentation concept. So if you wanted to make it as a group of uh, within this class, then you need to follow the indentation. And at the starting of the class, maybe you can give document string, that is optional. Document string optional, what it is we'll see. And variables and methods, there is, it is not mandatory you need to declare only two variables or two methods, like that. There is no restriction. Requirement your application, you can declare n number of variables and number of methods in your class. And optionally, constructors concept, what is constructor we'll see. Constructors optional, this is also optional. So we are going to use constructor. What is constructor? Constructor is nothing but which is used to initialize the variables within the class, that we can see with an example. This is the basic syntax of the class, how you are going to write your class. So let us go to Jupyter Notebook and we'll start example. So what I will do, I will create a new notebook for object-oriented programming. So we'll see with some example how to create a class, how to create an object. And then we'll discuss something about constructor and methods with examples. So for example, I wanted to create class student. So what this document string will do means, a document string, in order to declare document string, you need to declare either triple single quote or double quote, triple double quote or triple single quote. Like this, you need to write document string. This is optional. So what this document string will specify means, what is the functionality of this class. So this is non-executable statement, like comments we are writing, right? Like this is also non-executable string. But just what we are defining the document string is, what is the functionality of the class? What is the functionality of the class? Means if someone is reviewing your code, or if someone wants to work on your class which you created, if you provide some functionality what that class is doing, then they can understand this class is for, so to make this purpose, means they can understand your class by reading this document string. So I hope this is open. Okay, yeah. So object oriented programming, simply I can write like this, object-oriented programming. So class student, let us say this is class student. So what I am saying is, in order to declare a document string within the class, we can write within triple single quote or triple double quote. Let us say this class is created for maintaining student information. Maintaining student information. As I am telling, it is non-executable statement. Just for our purpose, we are declaring what that class is doing. And so this is simple implementation. Just I didn't added any variables, any methods. Just I in this class I maintained just what is the documentation of that class. If I wanted to see this documentation, what this class is doing is there is one variable. So print. So by using class name dot underscore underscore doc underscore underscore. So this variable is used to see what is the documentation of that class. So whatever the documentation string I have defined, right? In order to check what documentation string is defined, I can use this variable to see what is the documentation of that class. And there is one more function, help function, that can also you can use to see the help of your class. So it will give additional information like you can see here you can see your documentation string. In addition to that, it is giving some other information we can see when we work with actual classes. So just if you wanted to see the document string, you can use this underscore underscore doc, or you can use help function to see what is the documentation of your class. Now we will create a simple class to maintain student information. So write a Python class, write a class to create student class, and to create student class and and create a method to display student information. This is the class I'm going to create. Just my requirement is to create one class for student, and what I'm asking is display the student information method. So by using one method, I wanted to display the entire student's information. So let us see class student, and here I'm not declaring any variable. Just what is my requirement is I need to create one method which will display the student's information. So in order to create method, clearly observe here I'm calling method. So whenever if you are writing function in a class, so method is nothing but our normal functions only, but there is slight difference between methods and functions that we are going to see now. So method also we can declare by using def keyword. So let us say display is my method. I wanted to display name of the student, age of the student, and total marks of the student. So this is my requirement. Just I am passing few details to here and print. So name is name, and print age is age, print marks is marks. So let us say I have created like this. And here one note for method, very important note. If you are writing a method in a class, first parameter will be self keyword. So these are the variables, these are the parameters I require. Name, age, and marks. I wanted to display this information. In addition to this, what I'm telling is for class methods, whatever the methods you are going to declare within the class, first keyword is always self keyword. So why self means, like in other programming languages, if we have idea about Java or .NET, there is one keyword called as this keyword. So this keyword is nothing but to point to the current object. to point to the current object. Similar way, this self is used to point to the current object. So why I need to point to the current object means my class is a general class called as student class. In this student, there may be 20 students or 30 students or 100 students. If I create an object, for example, I wanted to display information about Girish. So Girish is one student and Mukesh is another student and Sudeshna is another student and so on. So there will be multiple objects I'm going to create. How my class will identify particular object means by using self keyword, then it will be able to identify the current object. If I create an object for Girish, if I wanted to identify, if I want to match it to the current object, then I need to use self keyword. So this is one difference. I will tell you one more difference between the function and method. So first you need to remember first keyword for your whatever the methods you are going to write within the class, first keyword is self keyword. Other than that, remaining whatever the functions we discussed in the last sessions, same thing we are writing the function, but in addition to that, we need to declare one variable called self keyword to point it to the current object. And if you see, if I write this function outside, so what is the advantage is no need to create anything. If I know the function name, then I can able to access my function. So the problem here is if I declare a display function outside the class, what it will happen is if I know the function name, just I can invoke this function wherever it is required. So once if you declare the function by using that function name, I can able to use my function. But if you write a method within the class, so let us execute this program first. So just I declared one class and I declared one method. If I try to call this method, so previously if I write just outside of that class and if I pass the required parameters, then I can able to access that method. So but you can I think display method whether we have somewhere the previous no. So why it is so actually it should give error because somewhere it is taking some catchy method or something. But actual concept is until unless if you create an object, it will not give an error. So how I can able to access this method is, so how to able to access this method is first you need to create an object. How to create an object is object name equal to so class name. Here I don't have the constructors. Otherwise, if you have the constructor, then you need to initialize your variables that we can see next example how to create a constructor. Here I don't have a constructor. Just you need to mention the class name to create an object. Let us say student1 is my object. And how I can access my method is s1 dot display. s1 dot display. And so what are the parameters? No need to pass self keyword. So self keyword is mandatory keyword. No need to pass anything. Self keyword. So no need to pass a self keyword. So it is a mandatory keyword. The system can understand that self keyword is a mandatory keyword. So what you need to pass? You need to pass the remaining parameters, whatever this method is expecting. That is something Girish and marks is something like this. So name is Girish and this means it is displaying the required information. So how to access a class method is first you need to create an object. So the differences if they ask I means if any interviews or somewhere, if they ask the questions between what is the difference between normal method and a method written in a function and a method in a class is, first thing is you need to explain the parameter. First parameter is self keyword. So this self keyword which is used to identify the object. So corresponding object, if you want to identify, self keyword is mandatory, where normal function is not required, self keyword. That is one difference. And another difference is, if you wanted to access a class method, then you need to create an object. Through object, you are able to access that class method. So these are some main differences between normal function and method written in a class. And so what I'm saying, why we need to use self keyword is, if I create multiple objects, let us say student 2. So student 2 is something like Ishwar, something like this. So if you wanted to identify the current object, then you need to use self keyword. If you wanted to identify the current object, then you need to use self keyword. So that is why we are using self keyword. This is simple example where I have created one class with the simple method called as display method. Now we will see importance of constructor. Constructor. A constructor which is used to initialize the class variables within the class. So a constructor which is used to initialize the variables within the class, used to initialize variables in the class. A constructor is used to initialize the variables within the class. And so we'll see how to, what is the constructor name is. Always in Python, the constructor name is underscore underscore init underscore 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 init underscore underscore. In other programming languages, if you have some idea about Java or C++, in Java, how we are going to declare a constructor is, let us say class name is student. And how we are going to declare a constructor is, you need to use the same class name in order to use the constructor name in other programming languages. So constructor, the functionality of the constructor in Python or Java.NET, it is same, which is used to initialize the variables of the class. The syntaxes will be different. In Python, I need to use the class name as a constructor name. But in Python, in Java, it is class name I need to use as a constructor name. But in Python, constructor name is always underscore underscore init underscore underscore. So let us take one example. So write a class with constructor, class with constructor to initialize student variables. So what is the use of this constructor when it will invoke this constructor? And now we need to understand the difference between a function, method, and constructor. So this is also like a function, but there is a slight difference between all these three. So let us declare some class student. So after executing, I will explain the answer. What is the difference between a method and constructor? Let us say def. So constructor name is always underscore underscore init underscore underscore, followed by, let us say, name. This is also self keyword is mandatory as a first keyword. Name, age, gender, marks, and so on. So self dot name equal to name, self dot age equal to age, self dot gender equal to gender. So this is constructor. What is the use case? We'll see. And I will write one function display method self keyword. Here I'm not going to pass those variables because I'm going to initialize the variables through the constructor. So I can use those variables here. In order to use that, you need to use self keyword. Name is self dot name. So if you understand these basics, next inheritance, polymorphism, everything is very simple. Everywhere you need to create a class and object only. Even in inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, everything is based on class and object only. So that's why cons means you need to understand how to create a class and object. Next, remaining concepts are very simple. So print age is self dot age. So I will tell you why I'm using self. Previous example, I didn't use self, and here I am using self dot name. So why I'm using self keyword here, I will explain. So print gender is self dot gender. So the one thing first you need to note down here is first thing, whatever the method name I have given, right? Underscore underscore init underscore underscore, it is called as constructor. So the name is always this one only. So if you wanted to declare a constructor within the class, it should be always underscore underscore init underscore underscore. This is first rule. And so whether I need to invoke, if you see the previous example, so what I am doing is I am creating a object and then I'm invoking that function, right? Whatever the method you declared, this method, if I wanted to invoke, I need to create an object and then I can able to invoke this method. But for constructor, this is one of the very important difference. For constructor, no need to create a variable, no need to create no need to invoke with object. No need to invoke with object. Then how that method will be invoked? Means I wanted to initialize name, age, and gender for the class student. Means whatever the object I'm going to create, I need to initialize all these variables. Then how it will invoke that constructor is while creating an object, directly it will invoke or automatically it will invoke constructor. This is one of the very important difference. Invoke constructor means specifically no need to call that underscore underscore, means whatever the object I am going to create, student one equal to, if I create an object, no need to invoke with that object. So what I mean to say, the second point is no need to invoke like s1 dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore. No need to invoke like this. So directly whenever you are going to create an object, then it will invoke the corresponding constructor. And what is the important rule here is whenever you declared a constructor, you need to pass those many you need to pass those many parameters while creating the object. So while creating the object, previously if you see, I created an object for student class. Since I don't have any constructor, I'm not passing any parameters like student name or age, nothing I'm passing because I don't have any constructor here. But if you have a constructor, you need to pass those many parameters to your class. You need to pass those many parameters to your object. If you don't pass, then you will get error. For example, I declared this student class and constructor and method. I'm trying to create an empty object here, then it will gives you error. You can see it is expecting missing arguments name, age, and gender. So you can understand here while creating the object itself, it is calling this constructor. So you need to understand one thing here. While creating an object itself, it is calling this constructor. So whatever the parameters it is required, you need to pass those many parameters. We need to pass those many parameters. So just create a class here, and so try to assign an empty object here, then it will gives you error. If you pass required number of parameters, then it is allowed. You can see Ishwar and age and marks, and I will create one more object s2 equal to student Jahangir, and let us say 22, 92, and so on. Something I have created two objects. Now two objects are created. So you can see there is no error like missing three positional required arguments. Now where I can see whether this is initialize these variables or not. So what I'm telling is while creating an object itself, it will invoke the constructor. It will initialize with these variable names, that is name, age, and gender. It is going to initialize. Where I can see whether it is initialized these values or not. Right? Means I declared one function, display function, and here I'm not passing name, age, and gender, right? Just through this constructor only, I'm able to use those values. If I call with S1 object, it will point to that object by using this self keyword, and self dot name is s1 dot name means whatever the s1 student one object is there, it will take student one name, and self dot age means it will take student one age, it will take student one gender. If I call with a second object s2 means it will call it will remember that second object, and it will take the s2 dot name, s2 dot age, and s2 dot gender. So now if I call with the corresponding object s1 dot display, s1 dot display. So what is the output I will get? Name of the student is Ishwar, 27 and 91. And if I call with the second object, then it will display the second object details. So if I call with second object, s2 dot display, then you can see Jahangir 22 and gender is not gender. Here I thought marks, right? Just you can pass gender. Just you can pass the gender, and you can see the details of second object. How it is identifying this second object and first object means by using that self keyword is mandatory in our class methods. Whatever you are going to write, the methods are constructors. So first keyword is self keyword. And here very important rule is this constructor will be automatically invoked whenever you are creating an object. Specifically externally, no need to call with the object. Means while creating an object itself, it is expecting those many parameters it required to initialize those variables. So no need to call explicitly like s2 underscore s2 dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore means no need to call explicitly like that. So while creating an object itself, it's expecting those many parameters. If you don't pass those many parameters, even if you miss something, then it will gives you error. So that's why whenever if you wanted to create an object, definitely if we have an idea of uh, what what constructor it contains, how many parameters it required. If you know the complete knowledge of that class, then only you are able to initialize that object. So here the thing is Until unless if you create an object, it will not possible to access all these methods or constructors. Means this constructor will be invoked automatically when you are creating an object. And so while initializing the object itself, you need to pass those many parameters. And self keyword is mandatory for both constructor and method. The basic difference is it is invoked automatically during object creation, but you need to invoke by using object in order to access this method. So these are the basic differences when you are creating an object and class. And we'll see some more examples. Like this, I will create some simple example class employee. And so def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. So self keyword. So let us say company name, company location, and project what he is working. So employee details I wanted to maintain, and how to initialize the variables is self dot company equal to company. How many variables you are passing to this constructor? So those many variables you need to pass while declaring an object. Self dot location equal to location, and self dot project equal to project. And let us say declare two more parameters, first name and last name, and you can initialize those variables. Self dot first name equal to first name, and self dot last name equal to last name. And I will declare two functions. So one function is get full name. So get full name is one function. So so print full name is, so full name is, so self dot first name. If I wanted to access these variables, you need to use by using self keyword. In case if you are directly passing to the function, so for example, if I directly pass here first name, last name, no need to use self keyword because directly you are passing to the function. But if you are initialized through the constructor, definitely you need to use self keyword. First name and just plus last name, self dot last name. And I will write one more function. You can write n number of functions. There is no restriction. N number of functions means n number of methods. Get something um, or display details. Just we can write one function. So self keyword is mandatory. So print location of the company, self dot location, and so on. Whatever the details you wanted to print or whatever the logic you wanted to perform, you can perform. Once if you create object, means you can able to access all these methods. Let us create employee one equal to employee. If I give an empty employee object, it will gives you an error. So what you need to pass those many required parameters. And you need to remember self keyword is not required to pass. So what are required company? Let us say Deloitte, and so what are the parameters? Location, let us say Hyderabad, and project, let us say XYZ, and first name Let us say I will write my full name and last name. So once if you create an object, if you don't pass these many parameters, definitely will get an error. Now if you create an object through an object, I can call whatever the function I require. So let us say get full name is function which will display the full name of the employee. So full name is this. Like this. So how to create a class, how to create an object, how to pass the parameter, how to initialize the variables within the constructor. And you need to understand the importance of the constructor is to initialize the variables whatever you required within your application. Means if I wanted to initialize some variables which are going to use within these functions, then I can initialize at the starting of my class within this constructor. Means constructor name, what are the class you are going to create for each class, the constructor name is constant. This name will not change. Function names based on your requirement, you can change the function names, but constructor name is always only that underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and self keyword is mandatory. So this is basic introduction about what is class and how to write a constructor method within the class. You can practice n number of questions, n number of classes you can create and see how to create a class, how to create an object within the class. And so these fundamentals, at least you should know what are the fundamentals of this class. And these methods, there are different types of methods within the class. And just a minute. So in class, we are having some concepts. Maybe I will give one example for that. So variables are also different types of variables you can declare within the class. And methods also, there are different methods you can declare within the class. So methods and variables, what are the methods, what are the variables it will support is, it will support instance variables and static variables and local variables. Instance variables, instance variables, static variables. So these are the two categories, instance variables and static variables. Instance variables and static variables. So what is instance variable means, whatever the variables we discussed till now, all those comes into instance variables. So whatever we declare, right, objects, and whatever the objects, through the objects we are creating the variables in the constructor, all those comes into instance variables. Means what is instance variable means, for each object it will be, the values will change. If I create one object, the values may be differ, and for other object the values may be different. Means these will be, each instance it will be different values. Instance variables, whatever we declared till now in the previous examples, all those comes under instance variable. So for each object values may differ. Values may differ. Means for each object, if I create object 1 or object 2 or object 3, for n number of objects, the values may be differ. So that is an example for instance variables. So these are instance variables. Now you need to understand what is static variable, when exactly we are going to use this static variable. So we'll get some questions in the interviews also, the static variable, static methods, how to declare a static method in a class, how to declare a static variable in a class. That kind of questions you will get in class concepts. So what is static variable is, just a minute. So what is static variable is, for example, I am declaring NIT Silchar students details information. Means here the college name will not change for each and every student. So there is no need of means there is no meaning if I always, for example, there is 500 students in NIT Silchar or 1000 students in NIT Silchar. So for each student, no need to every time sending the college name as input to for every student. For example, if I create a class student and while initializing your constructor, for each student, no need to send college name here. So because college name is static for all the students within the that particular college. Student name may differ, or age may differ, or marks may differ, or gender may differ, but college name is name, age, marks, let us say gender, and so on. So here the values may differ for these variables, but college name is constant for this particular college, right? So then that kind of variables, we can call it as a static variables. Static, static variables. Static variables. Means whatever the variables which you wanted to define statically, means where the value will not change, we can declare those variables as a static variables. Then next question is where I need to define those static variables in my program. Let us take our previous example, student example. So let us take this example only. So see here how I can define this static variable is, let us say I wanted to declare college name as a static variable. You need to define outside of all those functions. So whatever the functions constructors we declared within the class, right? You need to declare outside that functions and constructor. Then this is constant to that particular class and methods. Means wherever you are going to access within the class, this college name is constant. Means it will not change for each and every object. For all the objects, if you create 100 objects, for 100 objects, it will be same. Means if I create 100 student objects, for all the 100 student objects, the name will be constant. Nothing but static variable means if you wanted to declare a constant value for any variable, you need to declare that constant value outside of all these functions and constructors. You can declare n number of variables based on your requirement. For example, I am declaring this class for specific mechanical student class. So let us say this is mechanical student class. In this case, uh, branch is static. For example, branch is static because for all the mechanical students, this will be same. For example, instead of mechanical student, if you are declaring complete college students, in that case, that branch is not a static variable. In that case, you can pass here. Just understand when I need to define a static, when I need to define a instance variable. So for example, entire college students, the branch may be not constant variable because some members may be from CSE, mechanical and so on. If you declare a specific class for mechanical, in that case, you can declare that as a static variable. So based on your requirement, you can declare those many static variables within your class. Then next question is how to access this variable. So I declare my class like this. Then how to access these static variables. So these static variables, if I declare like this, so see here, if I declare like this, and so see here, student1 equal to student, and so whether I need to pass this static variable while creating my class object. Answer is no, because For my constructor, only four these parameters, right? So I need to pass only those many parameters. No need to pass this static variable. Let us say name is Jahangir and age is 21 and gender is male and gender is male. And so you can see required positional argument because I executed branch previously, right? That's why it is asking branch. So if you add branch also, you need to pass that branch. If you don't add branch, then no need to add. Means how many number of basic thing is, if you add n number of parameters, you need to pass those many parameters during creating object. And so if I call s1 dot display, s1 dot display, so it will display the student details like what is the name, age, and gender. If I wanted to access the college name for this student, so how to access is by using the object name itself. By using object name, then you are able to access that particular variable. So s1 dot college name, s1 dot college name. If you create second object, so if you create second object also, so let us say we'll create Mukesh and all these things. So let us say S2 instead of S1 because S1 just I stored another value, right? So S2 dot college name. So here understand what is the difference between static variable and instance variable is for each instance if you see name, age and gender is changing means based on my requirement I am passing those instance values. But this static value is always constant throughout your class. Where you need to declare your static variable is outside of your complete class, not complete class, outside of all the functions and constructors you need to declare this static variable. So then this static variable is constant for your class. And so there is some more concepts. I think I can stop the session now.